Hello and welcome to Health Matters on Channels Television. Thanks for staying tuned to the program. I am Mary Alale Yusuf. Albinism is a non-contagious, genetically inherited difference present at birth. According to the UN, in almost all types of albinism, both parents must carry the gene for it to be passed on, even if they do not have it themselves. The condition is found in both sexes, regardless of ethnicity, and in all countries of the world. Albinism results in a lack of pigmentation or melanin in the hair, skin, and eyes, causing vulnerability to the sun and bright lights as a result. Almost all people with the condition are visually impaired, and some have skin problems. Occurrences vary, with an estimated 1 in every 17,000 to 20,000 people affected in North America and Europe. The condition is much more prevalent in sub-Saharan Africa, with estimates of 1 in 1,400 people being affected in Tanzania, and prevalence as high as 1 in 1,000 reported for select populations in Southern Africa. In the studio with me is a consultant physician and dermatologist at the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, Dr. Folakemi Cole Adeife. Also joining us is disability rights advocate and head of operations at the Glory Law House Limited in Lagos, Motolani Ujuri. Thanks for coming, both of you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Albinism, I got the impression that there's more than one type of albinism, Doctor. Can you fill us in on that?
Well, yes, as you mentioned, it's a genetic disorder and it's a heterogeneous group, meaning that there are actually between 7 and 15 different genes that can be responsible for albinism. So depending on the type of gene that is involved, there may be variations in the type of albinism. Some people have just ocular albinism, meaning just the eyes are involved, while other people have the oculocutaneous, where the eyes, the skin, and the hair are involved. And in that, you have different types. There's the OCA1, OCA2, brown OCA, OCA4, and new genes are being discovered, almost every year that are involved in albinism. And the different types, you have some people with albinism that their hair is completely yellow or white, and you have other people that they have a bit of a brownish, or ginger color. So that's why there are, it's obvious that there are different types, both genetic types called genotypes, as well as phenotypes, that's the physical characteristics of persons with albinism.
Now, here in Nigeria, we feel we can identify somebody with albinism by just looking at the skin and then looking at the eyes, because, there's this characteristic movement of the eyes from side to side.
Yeah, that's called nystagmus.
How would you identify somebody with this condition who is a Caucasian, for example? I mean, the person is a Caucasian, so...
Oh, yes, there are many Caucasians who have albinism. It's more difficult to detect in Caucasians because generally there are non-albinism Caucasians who have blonde hair, who have fair-colored eyes, blue or green eyes, and they do not have albinism. But you can still detect in Caucasians, the hair tends to be quite white, and also they may have like a pinkish discoloration of the eye, not just the regular light color. That is one way in which it's distinguished. And then they may also have a family history. Usually there's a family history of albinism in every race or every ethnic group.
Okay, let me turn to you, Tolani Ujuri.
Yes.
You are obviously living with the condition.
Yeah.
We are used to, I believe we are used to albinism in Nigeria, but do we still have stigma? How has it been for you?
We've always had it, we still have it. And people still believe in all the myths that persons with albinism can't see during the day, can't see in the sun. It's a fact that we know not everybody, that persons with albinism got low vision. And that's why you get to squint in bright lights, not just the sun. And people just assume for that reason we don't get to see at all. People still believe that persons with albinism don't eat salt. I mean, they don't consume salt. They're not meant to consume salt.
Where did they get that from?
Yeah, those are old, time beliefs, and it passed through generations and all that, all sorts of things. But those, the ones I mentioned, are the most common ones. But I think over time, with age, I got used to it. But younger children still, they have to battle all those things. You go in some public places, some people still, when they see persons with albinism, they squint their eyes, trying to like do that and all of that.
No, what's that about? Is that teasing?
Yes, you just use the word teasing. I mean, you just get, you get these things. And the main problem is public enlightenment. The public enlightenment is not there. Like, is to tell the general public that persons with albinism are just normal people like you, aside from the pigmentation and the low vision. Short of that, they are good to go. But, you know, we have children in school. They come and say all sorts of things and all that. I went to a public school and I went to a boarding house.
How was it like? I mean, the regular child is bullied. So how about someone who looks a bit different?
One of the things, I had a very good support cast. I had a wonderful support cast. And from home, luckily, my mother, way back, happened to be a nurse. So she came to grasp with these things quite early. My parents knew my eyes have to be protected with photochromic lenses, which are pretty expensive way back then, even are quite expensive now.
Worse.
And way back in the boarding house, it was just a simple rule for me that either you sink or you swim. So there are no two ways to it. And yeah, it's been looking back now, it's one of the most exciting times of my life. I learned to live with people, all sorts of people. And the people I live with then are still very, very great friends of mine till today.
And some of your enemies probably became your friends?
No, they were all my friends, because I was forced to look at the bright side of life. That is just it. Self-love, number one. Number two, I just had to look at the bright side, not that they're making fun of me and I go to the corner to cry. No, that's not the choice. It's not. It's not an option on the table.
Okay, so doctor, let me come back to you with this. Some people living with albinism have the most lovely looking skin. I've seen some people with skin that is like practically glowing. I'm wondering if that is one of the characteristics. But then there are some who have blotches, you know, maybe even open wounds. What's the reason for this?
The reason is very simple. It's sun protection, either the presence or the absence of sun protection. People with albinism do not have melanin in their skin or have very little. And melanin is what actually provides us as some form of natural sun protection. So a person with albinism is more prone to sun damage, skin sun damage. And if they do not take extra precaution to protect their skin from the sun, the skin becomes, it ages rapidly. They develop various forms of skin lesions or blotches or patches. And some of them can become burns. And they can also have DNA damage on the skin, which leads to skin cancers. So those that have very beautiful skin that it looks, flawless are people who are probably very well enlightened and have, taken extra precaution with sun protection by, wearing clothing that covers their skin when the sun is out and using sun protective creams, what we call sunscreens or sunblock creams. And
this
also,
is the same kind of cream, Caucasians use at the swimming pools?
Right, exactly. At the pool, at the beach. Everyone actually now can benefit from the use of sunscreen. Yes, we dark-skinned people, our skin tends to age less rapidly because of the melanin, but we can also still benefit from sunscreen.
So I can use sunblock too?
Oh, yes.
All right.
It's actually advised, but it is more important and life-saving for Caucasians and people with albinism because they lack or they have a limited amount of the melanin in the skin. So that is an essential thing that everyone with albinism must understand, that the problem with the skin being blotchy or looking bad is not about eating salt or not eating salt. It's about sun protection. So a person with albinism must avoid sun exposure as much as possible.
Wouldn't they ask you, why should I have a problem with my skin? There are some people who are just as light as I am, you know, in other climes, and they're not having this problem.
Yes, because the UV intensity, ultraviolet intensity, varies from country to country. In the tropics, where we are close to the equator, like in Nigeria, in some parts of India, Brazil, that is, you know, on the equator line, the sun UV intensity is very, very high. That's what we call a tropical climate. And in climates like that, the sun is actually much more intense and can cause more damage to the skin. That's one of the reasons why if a Caucasian lived in Africa for a long period of time without sun protection, they will have similar skin challenges as a person with albinism. And if a person with albinism lives in a temperate climate, like in Northern Europe or in Northern America, they are less likely to have the challenges with their skin that they have when they are living here in a tropical climate like Nigeria.
So are you saying that the beginning and end of this skin challenges and even skin cancer is using the sunblock? That will prevent it completely?
Not just sunblock, but other sun protective practices. Sunblock alone is incapable of completely solving the problem, although it will contribute significantly if used religiously. But we also advocate that people use sun protection clothing, like hats, sun hats, umbrellas. People with albinism must go out during the day with a UV umbrella. It's a special type of UV umbrella that blocks the UV rays, and use a hat that covers their face and their head, because most people with albinism actually develop skin cancers on the head and neck, because those are the parts that are most exposed to the sun. And then, as much as possible, they should avoid certain hours of the day outdoors, between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m., when the UV intensity is highest in the sun. In addition to that, sunscreen. So sunscreen is one of several protective factors for sun protection. It's not the only one, and we do not advocate sunscreen alone.
Okay.
Another challenge with sunscreen is that it's expensive, and a lot of people with albinism in Nigeria can't afford sunscreen as often as they should.
Let me ask Tolani Ojiri, who is in the seat, the driver's seat of this matter. You are an advocate, you know, and you have the condition. What has it been like for people? What kind of problems do they come to you with? What are the challenges with, you know, going through with this protective living, so to speak?
The number one challenge is a lot of persons with albinism they are not aware of the dangers of the skin cancer. They are not aware because I think from the early stages, it doesn't really get that painful. It's not painful.
Oh, there's pain involved.
It's not painful. Cancer, when it gets to the advanced stage,
early stages may not be painful. In the advanced stages.
But the other stages,
that would be terrible.
Yes. So that's number one problem. So that's why we're trying to create awareness. You see a mother with a baby or with a toddler exposing the child to the sun, and you're telling her that, madam, can you just protect this baby, cover up with something? And like, no, my baby's fine and all that. So where do you go from there? So apart from that, there's what you call the disability extra cost. Like she said, the sunscreens are not cheap. For a person with albinism to adhere to these rules might cost you not just a few thousands, might cost you so much because the sunscreen is there, the glasses is there. You might have like 3, 4, 5 pairs.
Why so many?
Photochromic lenses are not cheap, number one. Number two, some people use photochromic bifocals. Some people how
about those who don't need a prescription?
You need to protect your eyes from the intensity of the sun.
You have to get a prescription.
You need to wear particular kind of clothing. I have to wear clothing that will cover hair, go to hair. Then the sunscreens. If you don't really buy the really expensive one, it messes up your clothes.
Okay.
So the lifespan of your clothes, it will not be the same as yours. I mean, for me, it won't be the same thing as yours. So all these things you'd have to, apart from telling people, and they tell you sometimes, get that kind of money, is it because you're well off and all that? Is it the mother that, is even struggling to feed the child that would now take all those precautions? Some try, but some, they've passed that level that they just don't care. So that's why we try to enlighten them, then moving from there to empower these mothers. We know that it costs you some money. We do, we look at other options, try to get some people who will fund this disability extra cost in the area of sun protection.
Let's go on a short break.
All right.
When we come back. We're going on a short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about albinism and how we should know everything about it and stop giving them trouble in school, really. This is Health Matters on Channels Television. You can call 0808-054-2233 for your questions on albinism. You can send email. The address is moalale@channelstv.com. And you can tweet at CTV_Mary A. All about albinism as we continue the program. Do we have any more myths? Those myths make me laugh.
Yeah, it's believed that the black spot, the freckles, is caused by the salt. By sodium. Eating salt, and that's not true. It's the exposure to the sun.
So they give you food that is tasteless.
Well, I never went down with that because nobody ever liked it. It's the sun protection. Once you protect, and the protection has to start very early.
Very early, yes.
Very, very early.
Okay, that's something I want to ask the doctor. Sorry, we'll come back to you. You have, first of all, how early in life can you discover that a child has this condition?
Well, as soon as a child is born, really.
It shows.
Yes, in most cases, particularly in us African or dark-skinned people, you may have two dark parents and the child is extremely fair, and then the eyes, are a particular color. The hair looks white or yellowish. Of course, at birth...
Let me quickly jump in there and take Ada, who is standing by. Hello, Ada. What's your question? From Jos.
Calling from Jos, State. That is you see, there's so much stigma. We need enlightenment. There's something wrong with people living with albinism, as far as I'm concerned. Most of them are intelligent. I have some of my friends. But when it gets to getting married, they find it very difficult. One of my friends, she eventually got married because because of war. We had to talk to her mother-in-law to accept it. She said that she was afraid her son is going to have all albinism.
Okay, I think we've...
She has 3 children, and they're not albinos. But people are saying that eventually along the line that they must be, the albinos will kill for face. They must, somebody along the line will have it, since it's genetic. So I want to really know. And then, is it advisable for 2 albinos to get married? What is the implication?
Wonderful question. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Is it advisable for 2 people with the condition to get married? Does it ever happen?
It does happen, actually. However, we do counsel them. If 2 people with albinism get married, all their children will have albinism.
Without exception?
Yes, because it's a genetic factor. There's a genetic condition that is recessive, meaning that you have to have 2 pairs of affected genes to have albinism. That's why the lady in question, when she had her own children, they were normally colored because, the husband does not have the albinism gene or has at least one normal pigment gene. But yes, those children, may in future, if they get married to somebody who also has the gene recessive, they could have a child that has albinism.
So a lot of the time, I notice that it skips a generation and appears, down the line.
Yes, and that's because that's what is called a recessive gene. So genetics is like probability. If the chance that you meet is just like the ASAA,
yes,
it's the exact same.
Sounds a lot like
it's the exact same mode of inheritance. It's an autosomal recessive mode of inheritance. So it can still be, you know, in the person, as the person can be a carrier. And if they meet another carrier, it's possible for one of their children to have albinism. But with two people with albinism, all the 4 genes that the child can inherit for skin color are all albinism. So they will have, all their children will have albinism.
Okay, so because of the concerns people, you know, are expressing, let me ask you this. Does someone living with the condition have any other thing wrong with them that we are not seeing? Like
no.
Maybe kidney problem, liver trouble,
absolutely
you know,
nothing.
Thyroid or something. So they are okay.
Yes, it's just, as we've mentioned, the visual difficulties and the skin color.
Okay, we'll come
Those
to
are
that
the only 2
thing
things. Every other body function.
Let me quickly take
normal.
Oscar. So
okay.
sorry, Oscar is on the line. Hello, Oscar. What's your question?
Yeah, hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Oscar White. I'm calling from Lagos, the Albinism Mayor of Lagos State. I greet Mr. Tolani there. I greet Dr. Koo.
Okay, they know you. Go on.
I just want to chip in something. I don't know, but the challenges we have with persons with albinism, most times if we put in for jobs, the discrimination around it is on the higher side. Like, they will be like, who told this albino that we are looking for somebody with his skin color? Can he see? What can he do? He doesn't have muscles. Really wrong. It has really affected a lot of people not meeting up with their dreams.
Okay.
And what they want to do. The discrimination is very, very high. Somebody wanted to go into nursing, but once she got there and she was discriminated because of her eye condition. You know, the low vision thing is general.
Okay, thank you so much, Oscar. Okay, thank you so much. I think we've got the gist of what he wants to say. Let me ask you, do you see well?
Yeah.
I mean, you're here now, so let's get it from you.
Okay, I ride bicycle all over Lagos, so...
Do you drive?
I drive.
Have you ever had an accident?
Lagos kind of accident.
Okay.
As every other person.
Like,
just like every other person, but you see.
I see, well, I see pretty well. I mean, for me, I engage in active sports, and that's cycling. For you to go on that kind of sport, you need a particular level of...
You've got to be able to see well enough.
So
however, it's not all people with albinism. Yeah. Some people have more visual impairment than others. That's the reality. But it's not that they cannot see. You know, they can see to an extent. And we always advocate in schools that people with albinism should be allowed to sit in the front of the class, very close to the blackboard, as close as possible. And also, if possible, their examination sheet should be in a bigger font,
okay,
you know, so that they can actually see it properly. So it's not that they cannot see. And I think the problem is in Nigeria, we need to be more empathetic and accommodating of people with disabilities. You know, it's not just with albinism, but people with wheelchairs, and we have to make allowances in the society, in the workplace, for people who have some little requirements to be able to...
up to a certain level, they should be allowed to work with the others.
Of course, even people who are completely blind, there are places in the world that they make exceptions. You must have a person with disability on your workforce, you know, so that, you know, you can make... But with albinism, it's not that they cannot see at all. It's just that they may need a bit extra effort to do so. So people should not discriminate. They are able to do jobs any job or occupation they find themselves just as efficiently as other people.
Thank you very much. I have to stop it here. The time went by so fast. Thank you so much for coming to the program. Tolani Ojuri, who is living with the condition and who is an advocate, and Dr. Folakemi Cole-Adeife. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you at home for tuning in and listening to this program. Please be kind to your neighbors. Have a wonderful day. I am Mary Alale Yusuf.